Hey, I'm Kelly Hogan, and I'm going to talk about one of my least favorite topics, calories. If you have ever been confused about whether or not you need to limit your calories, you are completely justified in your confusion. Not that you needed my permission. But some of the smartest and most research minds in the entire carnivore space will tell you that counting calories is absolutely stupid, that calories have nothing to do with the amount of fuel that your body needs. They'll say that calories are just the amount of heat required at a pressure of 1 standard atmosphere to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. And that's true. So they tell you, don't worry about calories, right? Don't worry about it. It's a measurement of heat. But some of those same exact people will also say that fasting is very important. So that's like saying, okay, calories do not matter at all, but it's essential that you sometimes eat 0 of them. But they don't matter. But also eat none of them. Okay, so I can assure you that I've been closely following this heated debate of calories definitely matter and calories definitely don't matter since the year 2009. For those of you not very good at math, that was 14 years ago. The arguments have stayed pretty much the same for 14 years. And honestly, I predict that not much is going to change in the next 14 years, but let's dig in anyway. So there are 2 primary camps when it comes to losing weight. One is the insulin model. And this is what most keto and carnivore people believe, and there's a lot of science behind it. And they say that calories matter less when our insulin levels are low. So you'll hear people say in this space, they'll say that calories don't matter, so you can eat just as much meat as you want, because eating meat lowers your glucose and it raises your ketones and it keeps your fasting insulin low, and it's a fasting mimicking state. Dr. Ben Bikman is a big advocate in the insulin model camp. I love that guy. I absolutely do believe that the research backs up the notion that we need our insulin levels to be low in order to avoid insulin resistance, to avoid metabolic syndrome, to keep our blood pressure low, to avoid dementia, to speed up our metabolism. Yes, the insulin camp. I love it. On the flip side, there's the other camp. That camp is the energy expenditure model. Some of those people are referred to as the CICO, the calories in, calories out. And to be fair, not everybody in this energy expenditure camp believes that it is simple as calories in, calories out, a simple math problem of how much did you eat versus how much did you exercise. Many acknowledge that it's more complicated than that, but that's the general idea. If you're not losing weight, eat less, move more. I did a lot of that eat less, move more thing before carnivore, and here's what I found. I could do that with carbohydrates for a while, but then I would get really hungry. And even if I ate very little food and I moved a whole lot, it's like my body was working against me and I would just keep regaining the weight. But that's when I was eating carbohydrates and I likely had very high insulin levels. So at this point, which of these 2 groups do I think is right? Insulin model or the energy expenditure model? And I actually think they both have a lot of really valid points. I do think it's easier to lose weight when our insulin is low. I believe that having high levels of insulin will make us far less healthy in the long term. So I do advocate for an extremely low insulinogenic diet. Meat. And of course, I also advocate for movement, sleep, stress management, resistance training, because those are the best ways to lower our insulin. But I've also heard Dr. Ben Bikman say that when our insulin levels are high, the calories do matter more. And that makes sense to me. So I'm not opposed to making sure that we're all eating enough food overall. That is important. Chronic undereating is an issue that will harm our health in the long term. It will slow down our metabolism. It will halt weight loss. I've seen undereating on a day-to-day basis do that for many, many people. And I think it's really common amongst women in the carnivore space. Secondly, I do think it's a good idea to make sure that we're not consistently overfeeding ourselves. Sometimes people overfeed due to low leptin levels. due to volume addiction, or due to simply eating really highly palatable foods. It's way easier to eat a lot more deviled eggs than hard-boiled eggs. One is more palatable than the other. And when we have really low leptin levels, or we're just leptin resistant, it's really hard to feel the feeling of, oh, it's easy to eat way more than our bodies really need. And there are plenty of people who do struggle with volume addiction. They get a big dopamine hit in their brain, a flood of happy feel-good chemicals when they get the stretch of the stomach being full of food, regardless of what the food is. So they'll often eat more and more and more, even when their body doesn't actually need that much fuel or calories. I know there are a lot of really brilliant people who will say that if you're only eating meat, then we're eating a species-appropriate diet. We do not need to worry about limiting our food in any way or counting calories because you've never seen a fat animal on a species-appropriate diet, right? Well, I have. His name is Otis, and it is my 10-pound Chiweenie. Okay, so here's the story. I have 2 dogs. I put both of them on a raw carnivore diet about 18 months ago. I just started giving them raw ground beef, ground chicken, ground turkey, some raw bones, meaty bones, some chicken feet, and I was mostly guessing at how much meat they actually needed to eat each day. One of my dogs is a very old, tiny Chiweenie named Otis. We don't even know how old. He was a rescue dog. He was found on the streets. He was half starved. He was unhealthy. He has 2 teeth left in his mouth. Not in great shape. My other dog is a puppy. Her name is Millie. She's 2, and she's much more hyperactive. So I knew I needed to give Millie more food than Otis, but beyond that, I didn't really know what I was doing. Millie did great with her new carnivore diet. She usually would clean her plate, sometimes would leave a little food behind, sometimes she wasn't hungry at all. She stayed at a very healthy weight. She did great. Otis, he would gobble up his food every day, and I would think, maybe he needs a little more, so I would give him more. He would eat that, so I'd give him a little more. And it turns out he ate everything on his plate, and within a month, Otis could not get up on the couch. Otis was officially a chunkalunk. My husband said, hey, Kel, have you noticed that Otis is, he's big? I said, yes. We had to buy him a new collar. We could no longer snap his collar. He had rolls on his neck and he couldn't get on the couch. So James said, teasing, of course, I thought carnivore was good for weight loss. Yeah, me too. Well, my guess is Otis probably does have high insulin levels. He ate kibble most of his life. Then he ate garbage on the street. He's been sick. He had food insecurity, so he gobbles up everything he can get his little paws on, his 2 teeth on. Otis is not going to leave food behind on his plate. He may have some volume addiction and food insecurity issues. Otis needed someone to pull back and be like, whoa, buddy, I don't think you need quite so much food. So I started pulling back on his portions. I didn't starve the dog. He was totally fine. He lost that weight. He can get up on the couch. He's doing great now. If Otis could talk, he would likely be in the camp that says, hey, you know what? Calories really do matter, it turns out. If Millie could talk, she would say something insane. She's a total nutcase. But she would probably be in the camp that says, why would you even count calories? You just eat till you're full, Otis. Just, if you're not hungry, you don't eat it. Leave it on your plate. These are 2 very different dogs. They're going to need to follow very different advice. They have different health histories, different dieting histories. They have different insulin levels and health concerns. That's what I think is happening in the carnivore space when we've got some people yelling, yes, calories matter. Of course you're going to gain weight if you're eating too much. And others who say that's ridiculous. It's all about what you're eating and the food you're eating. If it's species appropriate, you don't need to count your calories. Or do you? So I want to make sure that I express this very clearly. If you are finding that you do not need to track your calories, adjust your calories, or do any thinking of calories and macros in order to feel great and get positive results on a carnivore diet or whatever diet you are on, please don't, because not everyone needs to. If you're feeling good and getting positive results doing what you are doing in the simplest version possible, my gosh, keep doing that. But if the simplest version just is not working for you, there is no shame in getting some data and making adjustments. If you need to track calories for a while and examine your macros and make some adjustments, that's great. Let's do it. And if you don't, also wonderful, because we're not all the same. So let's just do what needs to be done and allow everybody else to do the same. But one night I was laying in bed and I thought, I need one of those charts, one of those yes, no charts, pick yes or no, and you follow the arrows. What is that thing called? So I looked it up and it was called a dichotomous key. Dichotomous key. So I thought, that's what I need to do. I'm going to make a dichotomous key. So here it is. Ta-da! Should I adjust my calories? Isn't that the $1 million question? So the ultimate question, in my opinion, is, am I feeling good and getting some positive results that I'm comfortable with for now? If your answer is yes, then you likely don't need to adjust your calories at this time. Enjoy eating meat. And you can revisit this topic at any moment if you ever have any issues. Have a nice day. Put away the dichotomous key. Bye. That's it. If your answer is no, then it may be time to try tracking your food and adjusting your caloric intake, at least for a little while. And follow your little arrow to the next question. Do you know if you are typically an undereater or an overeater? If the answer is, I am not sure, well, you can get a coach who's going to help you figure that out. I do spend a lot of time in my groups helping people figure out how to know using a TDEE, using a tracking app, if you're an undereater and overeater. But the short answer is, I would track your regular eating for a few days and just enter in a typical day of eating into your tracking app and compare it to your total daily energy expenditure. There are lots of ways to find out your TDEE online. I have some favorite ways that I share with my groups, but basically, get a clue about whether or not you're undereating or overeating. And I wouldn't just assume that you are an overeater just because you aren't losing weight. Trust me on this. A lot of people who cannot lose a pound are actually undereating. And once they start eating a little more, then they can eventually get to where they can lose some weight. But the assumption is, if I'm not losing, I guess I'm an overeater. No. But if you can back it up with data, and it turns out you actually are eating far less than is recommended on the TDEE, and remember, you are not feeling good and you're not getting those positive results, which is the reason you're still looking at this dichotomous key, then here's my advice. If you're an undereater that is feeling sluggish or has poor sleep, you're on the verge of carb cravings pretty often, you're struggling to lose weight, then I would try increasing your daily food intake by about 100 calories per day. So if you are finding out that you eat about 1,200 calories per day, and it turns out that you likely need 2,000 calories per day, I wouldn't just suddenly go up 800 calories. I mean, you can, just know you're almost certainly going to gain weight in the beginning of doing that. That's how I did it. Really overnight, I suddenly started eating more, and yes, I gained weight. If you're comfortable with that and you're okay with just getting some flowy clothes and feeling like, you know what, I'm just going to nourish myself for a while, you can do it that way. All good. But if you would rather skip the scale going up before it eventually goes down, you can do it really slowly. So increase to 1,300 calories per day and just stay there for a while. Just eat that amount for several days, and then you could try adding another 100 calories per day. Ways that you can slowly start increasing. If you're not eating 3 meals per day, you could try eating 3 meals per day. Add in a very light breakfast. I love eating breakfast. I do eat 3 meals per day. You could switch to eating more delicious and more highly palatable meats that you really enjoy. You could eat higher fat meats, which have more calories but don't take up more space in your belly. I would also avoid having a lot of the egg whites or lean meats. I wouldn't do a lot of fasting, and I wouldn't try to drink coffee all morning, which can suppress your appetite. Why? Because you've determined you are under eating and you don't feel good and you're not getting positive results. So you might need more food. But my advice on eating more food only applies to the people where it turns out, oh my gosh, I'm really not eating enough. I'm undernourished. I'm an undereater. And that has never been me. I tend to fall into the overeater category. I have a huge appetite, and I always have. And that is working out great for me right now. I do fall into the category of I'm feeling good and I'm getting positive results that I'm comfortable with right now. So I don't need to adjust my calories. But if you're an overeater that is feeling tired after meals, you just feel, oh, you're gaining weight or you're just not losing for long periods of time. You get nauseated or you get diarrhea occasionally after you eat. You might even get a burning sensation in your throat after you have a large meal. Then I would consider trying to slowly decrease calories. So let's say you find out that you're currently eating about 3,000 calories per day. Then I would not just dramatically drop to whatever the TDEE recommends. Let's say it's 1,500 calories per day. If you do that and you slash your calories in half, you're going to be very hungry. You're going to be gnawingly hungry, and your body is going to likely slow down metabolism, slow down function, be like, whoa, sister, where did the food just go? So I would try dropping from 3,000 to say 2,800 for a while. See how that feels. You likely won't feel any more hungry at 2,800 than you did 3,000 calories per day. And weight loss might begin with just a very slight drop. If it does, and you start going, oh my gosh, I'm dropping a little body fat right now, I'm feeling leaner, looking better. Okay, stay there. And then if it turns out that you didn't lose any more at 28 than you did at 3,000, you could try doing another slight drop, 2,700. See how that sits with you for a while. Does that suddenly bump up some weight loss? Does it make you feel hungry all of a sudden? Evaluate. So don't just do it every day, drop 100 calories. Just give it a little time. This is a process. Now, I never recommend dropping below the minimum recommended on your TDEE. So please don't ever drop to the point where now, yeah, you're hungry. You want meat. You're starving. If you want plain meat, especially if it's, say, plain burger patties or a can of sardines, some hard-boiled eggs, something not that exciting, you are likely hungry. Get some food. But once you have hit your minimum recommendation for the day, I think at that point, it's wise to switch to some less palatable foods. So I wouldn't keep eating things like sausage dips and cheesy concoctions, casseroles. I wouldn't have massive omelets and make things super seasoned and saucy. If you are an overeater and you have found the data to support that and you're not getting positive results, you don't need help making your food more tasty. You might want to pull back and go the other direction for a little while. A little less palatable, a little more plain, a little less seasoned, just to see, am I really hungry or am I just bored, tired, emotional? If those are your issues, then there are other solutions, but food can't fix those problems. Food is just a solution for true hunger. And if you're truly hungry, you're going to want plain meat. If you don't want plain meat, you're not truly hungry. So we need to find better solutions. Now, I mentioned earlier something called volume addiction, and I kind of breezed by that. You may have been thinking, what is volume addiction? How do I fix it? Do I have it? All right. So volume addiction is what I call it when people get the stretch of their stomach and they get this dopamine hit, and that feels really good. A lot of times those people end up being binge eaters, especially if they've done a lot of hardcore dieting in the past. So food was scarce. Even if food was around, you limited your calories, you made yourself diet way low calorie, and then your body was, in an attempt to survive, just became ravenous and started binge eating. And you got the stretch of the stomach, the dopamine hit, and then you're like, yes, binge eating, volume addiction. That has been me in the past. We are those people where if we go to an all-you-can-eat buffet, even as a carnivore, I will eat plate after plate after plate of whatever meat is available. I'm not hungry. I'm just enjoying that massive stomach stretch. And to me, that feels like such a good time. Like, wow, that was good. That level of a good time. My husband, on the other hand, who is not a carnivore, he is not an abstainer. He can moderate his food choices. He doesn't even like going to all-you-can-eat buffets. He said, I'm just always trying to get my money's worth, so I eat to the point where I leave feeling disgusted and sick, and I hate that feeling. He hates that feeling? Yeah, he does. He doesn't like buffets. I don't even understand that man sometimes. But he doesn't have volume addiction. He just wants to eat till he's good and nicely satisfied and then get back to life. We're two different people. But if you feel like, oh gosh, I think I fall in the volume addiction category, I have a few tips. I've been sharing these volume addiction tips with my groups for a really long time, but I was getting tired of saying it over and over, so I decided it was time for a video. So here we are. Tip number 1, slow down. Chew really thoroughly. A lot of times volume eaters are really fast eaters, and we eat way more than we need before our stomach has even had a chance to give our brain a signal of, satiety. We're just shoveling it in. And the next thing you know, we feel kind of sick because we've gone past that point of satiety. And even though we enjoy the dopamine hit from that stretch, we don't really enjoy how we feel afterwards when we feel a little, right? Another tip is do what your tracking app and TDEE recommend. Eat that at a meal, and then get up from the table and go do something else. This is when I go and I take my little after meal walk. Now, I'll tell you, when I get up from the meal, I'm a little annoyed about it because I really want to eat way more than that. So let's say you know that your body needs about 2,100 calories per day. That's what the TDEE recommends. That's what you know your body needs. So let's say you divide that into 3 meals per day, 700 calories for breakfast, 700 for lunch, 700 for dinner. So now it's dinner. You sit down and you eat your 700 calorie meal and you still want more. Why? Because you are a volume eater. And so you're waiting for this big stretch and it's just not coming. And you ate so fast that your brain hasn't even registered. So you want more. You could go back and get more right now. Or you could get up and go do something like take the walk and just tell yourself, when I get back from the walk, if I still want some plain meat, the plain burger patties or some sardines or something, hard-boiled eggs, something that's not super tasty, I can get more. So I do this a lot. I take my walk, I come back, and guess what? I'm not hungry. I just needed a little time for that satiety signal to be felt. If I were hungry, then I would allow myself to eat the meat. Trust me, I'm not going to go to bed really hungry. That's not how I roll. Another tip is to eat in an environment that is as low stress as possible. Sometimes we eat surrounded by our kids. We're trying to pass things out and help them. And there's a show on, the news is on, we're scrolling, we're replying to text, and you finished your meal and it hasn't even really registered that you're chewing or eating or that you're even having a nourishing meal. If you were to sit down, take a breath. First of all, a few very slow, deep breaths, a moment of gratitude. For me, that looks like thanking God for my food. It helps switch our body into rest and digest mode. Parasympathetic nervous system, baby. That will help you to actually realize I'm eating food right now. Kick on the digestive system. We're going to digest this food nicely. We're going to feel more satiated. But news and stress and toddlers, you still have to feed the kids, but you could feed them first and then feed yourself. You could put away devices. You could have that slow breath, slow chewing, and really say to yourself, oh, this is so good. This is nourishing. This food is giving my body everything I need. Let it really sink in mentally. This is mealtime. I think it also helps to remind yourself, there's no need to stuff or gorge myself. I live in a place where food is plentiful. My fridge is full of food. If I'm hungry later, I can eat. And if you suspect that you are leptin resistant, or even if you don't suspect it, it's not going to hurt to focus on getting some good sleep at night. And it will really help with your leptin levels to get some morning sunlight into your naked little eyeballs. It helps us to produce and to actually be sensitive to our own leptin. Eating some fat and protein for breakfast, getting morning sunlight into your eyeballs, prioritizing sleep at night, blocking blue light by either turning your phone screen to red, by not looking at your screens, by wearing blue blocking glasses in the evening. All of that is helpful for repairing leptin issues, and it will help you to actually feel more satisfied. Okay, controversial topic, but let's talk about eating leaner meats. If you're eating really lean meats, you can eat a much larger volume without getting as many calories as if you were eating a huge volume of high fat foods. The issue is a lot of people then start to feel bad. They eat low-fat carnivore and they suddenly have no energy. They're constipated, they're depressed, they're anxious, they're constantly hungry because they're just not getting enough dietary fat. So let's first acknowledge that leaner meats don't always give people better results, but you can eat a lot of it for the same number of calories, which will take up space in your belly. So that does work pretty well for some people. And that's why some folks prefer to eat a lot of fish or shrimp with a little butter, because shrimp are basically fat-free, and nobody but a seal should be eating fat-free shrimp, okay? So get a little butter at least. But you could eat some leaner steaks, some London broil, even burger patties without adding any fat to them. All of those are going to be a little bit more on the lean side, so you can eat more of it. It's going to take up some space in your belly, and it can make volume eaters actually feel more satisfied, and it just works better for them. But we can learn to eat less volume and still learn to feel satisfied with true nutrition, but it does take some practice. Okay, the final tip for volume eaters is something that I've been sharing for years, and it is eating the same meal over and over and over on a day-to-day basis, which is what I typically called, for me, it's the burger patty test, or even the cold burger patty test. I keep tons of burger patties on hand. And if I think I'm hungry, but I'm not really sure, do you want a burger patty? No. Then you're not really hungry. Do you want a burger patty? Yeah. You're hungry. Sometimes having lots of variety in the fridge can make us go, oh, well, yeah, I think I do want that and that and that, especially if carbs are involved. But even if they're not, I don't have to be hungry to go, oh, yes, I would like the omelet, some bacon. Oh, is that ribs? If there's a lot of variety on my plate, I can eat so much more. But if it's very single note, just burger patties on a plate, it helps me really know if I'm hungry. Also, if that's about the only thing in the fridge, it helps me know repeatedly if I'm constantly repeating these same meals. It helps me to know if I'm truly hungry. I just saw recently Dr. Lisa Wiedemann has been doing this for herself. Her repetitive meal lately has been a seafood dish, and it just helps her to know if she's truly hungry. That works really well for me. I'll go weeks where I'll eat almost the exact same thing every single day on repeat. And for one thing, it's simple. I just stock my fridge with tons of it, but it also helps me to just feel very in control of my own hunger signals. It helps me to know if I'm satisfied or not. I think that is an amazing tip that works well for a lot of my own coaching members. If you find it doesn't work well for you, just know it's okay if you thrive on variety. Some people don't do well with monotony, and they need that variety in their life, or else they're just going to quit and go back to carbs. And if that's you, that's fine. But eventually, it's pretty cool if you can learn to see food as nourishing, as tasty, but also it doesn't have to be entertainment. It's just fuel. It's to keep me satisfied. If I want entertainment or fun, I can get that in lots of other ways than food. All right. Now, I do not expect that I have completely answered all of your questions over whether or not calories matter, but I think the main points to remember are they matter more for some people than for others. If you are super healthy and young, you're lifting weights, you're active, any of those things, you likely don't have to worry as much about calories. particularly if your insulin levels are really low and you are just metabolically well. Enjoy eating your meats. If it's working for you, don't make this complicated unless you need to. And if you need to, don't worry. Just get some data and we can make adjustments simply by going up slowly or down slowly to find that sweet spot. And if you do find that you're struggling with volume addiction, there are some really actionable steps that we can take to make it easier for you to find your true hunger and then true satiety. If you need help, this is my passion. I sit in this chair and I work by looking at people on the screen and interacting and talking with them about what is their main issue that they're working on right now. And they've got group support and accountability, community. They can share their wins and then work and troubleshoot through the issues. I would love to work with you. Signups are happening right now. Click the link below and I hope to see you there. Thanks for joining me today. Bye.